The morning sun peeked through the curtains as Eliza Chen stood in front of her closet, carefully considering her options. Today wasn't just any day. It was her first job interview in 15 years. Her fingers moved across the hangers, finally, stopping at a simple navy blazer and matching skirt. Nothing flashy, just professional and neat, like she remembered from her days in the business world. "You sure you want to do this?" asked a deep voice from the doorway. Eliza turned to see her husband Michael leaning against the doorframe, coffee mug in hand, concern written across his face. "We've been over this," she said with a small smile. "The kids are in college now. I need something that's mine again." Michael nodded slowly. He understood, even if he worried. For 15 years, Eliza had put her career dreams on hold to raise their children and support his skyrocketing career in the tech world. Now at 42, she wanted back in, and she wanted to do it on her own terms. "Just remember, one phone call and—" "No," Eliza cut him off firmly. "No phone calls, no pulling strings. I want to earn this on my own merits." She straightened her shoulders. "I've listed my experience from before the kids, used my maiden name on the application, and I'm going to walk in there like any other candidate." Michael's expression softened with pride. This quiet determination was what had first drawn him to Eliza in college, long before his success, when they were just two ambitious students sharing dreams over cheap coffee. "Meridian Technologies would be lucky to have you," he said softly. "Just don't sell yourself short in there." Eliza checked her watch, a simple timepiece, not the luxury brand Michael had tried to gift her last Christmas. "I better get going. Traffic to downtown is always unpredictable." She grabbed her worn leather portfolio from the dresser. Inside was her carefully crafted resume, which highlighted her early career achievements while tactfully navigating the 15-year gap. What it didn't show was how she had been the unseen force behind many of Michael's biggest innovations, the late-night sounding board for ideas that eventually transformed the tech landscape. The drive downtown gave Eliza time to rehearse her answers to expected questions. She knew what was coming: the raised eyebrows at her employment gap, the subtle dismissal of her outdated experience. The business world could be harsh to women who stepped away to raise families, treating those years as a liability, rather than recognizing the skills they built. As she approached the gleaming glass tower that housed Meridian Technologies, Eliza felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. She'd researched the company thoroughly, their products, culture, recent stumbles in the market. She knew them almost as well as she knew her husband's company, having discussed both over dinner countless times. Finding a spot in the visitor's parking garage, Eliza checked her appearance one last time in the rearview mirror. Her dark hair was neatly styled, her makeup minimal but polished. She looked competent and professional, if not fashionable by the standards of today's tech world. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, a habit from the days when she used to give presentations. Back then, before the kids, she'd been known for her sharp insights and clear communication style. Those skills were still there, just rusty from disuse. The lobby of Meridian Technologies buzzed with energy. Young professionals in trendy outfits moved purposefully across the polished marble floor, many wearing wireless earbuds, engaged in conversations with invisible partners. Eliza approached the reception desk, suddenly aware of how different she looked from everyone else. The receptionist, a young man with stylish glasses and an undercut, glanced up briefly from his tablet. "Name?" he asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Eliza Wong," she replied, using her maiden name. "I have an interview at 10:30 with Human Resources." He tapped his screen a few times, barely looking at her. "34th floor. They're expecting you." He handed her a visitor badge with another quick tap on his tablet, already shifting his attention to something else. "Thank you," Eliza said, but he had already moved on. The elevator ride gave her another moment to collect herself. As she watched the numbers climb, Eliza straightened her blazer and gripped her portfolio tighter. She caught her reflection in the polished doors. She looked older than the bright-eyed young people she'd seen downstairs, but her eyes still held the same intelligence and determination they always had. When the doors opened on the 34th floor, Eliza stepped into a sleek reception area with Meridian's logo displayed prominently on the wall. Another young receptionist, This time a woman with vibrant blue tips in her hair looked up from behind a curved desk. "Hi, I'm here for an interview with..." Eliza checked her notes. "Madison Porter." The receptionist's eyes flickered over Eliza, taking in her conventional outfit and sensible shoes. Something like amusement crossed her face before she smiled professionally. "Of course. Please have a seat. I'll let them know you're here." Eliza sat in one of the modern chairs that seemed designed more for style than comfort. Around her, the office hummed with activity. Through glass walls, she could see people in collaborative spaces, gesturing at large screens or huddled around tables covered with devices. It reminded her of her early days in tech, though everything moved faster now with more screens and fewer paper files. She noticed a few curious glances from passing employees. She clearly didn't fit the Meridian mold. Most of the women she could see wore either sleek, fashion-forward outfits or casual tech company staples of expensive jeans and designer tops. Her department store blazer and practical pumps marked her as an outsider. 15 minutes passed before a tall woman with a sharp bob and designer glasses emerged from one of the hallways. She glanced at her smartwatch with a slightly annoyed expression before approaching. "Eliza Wong? I'm Madison Porter, head of human resources." Her handshake was brief and impersonal. "Follow me, please. The team is waiting." Eliza rose, taking a deep breath as she followed Madison down a corridor lined with meeting rooms named after famous inventors. The click of Madison's heels against the floor set a brisk pace that Eliza matched without comment. "We're running a bit behind today," Madison said over her shoulder, not slowing down. "So we'll need to keep this efficient." They stopped at a room labeled Edison, and Madison pushed open the door to reveal a modern conference room where two men sat waiting. One was scrolling through his phone with a bored expression, while the other studied what Eliza assumed was her resume with a furrowed brow. "This is Derek Simmons, Director of Business Development, and Trent Willis from our innovation team," Madison introduced with minimal enthusiasm. "Gentlemen, this is Eliza Wong, here for the Strategic Partnership Manager position." Derek, a man in his early 30s with carefully styled hair, stood to shake her hand. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nice to meet you, Eliza. Please have a seat." Trent, younger than Derek with trendy glasses similar to the lobby receptionist's, barely looked up from his phone. "Hey," he offered casually, finally setting the device down. As Eliza took her seat, she noticed the three interviewers exchange glances, the kind that contained an entire conversation. She'd seen that look before, had been on the giving end of it in her previous career. It wasn't a good sign. "So," Madison began, flipping through Eliza's resume with quick, dismissive movements. "You worked in business development at Tech Solutions until 2009, and nothing since then?" The question hung in the air, loaded with judgment. Eliza had prepared for this. She smiled confidently, maintaining eye contact with Madison. "Yes, I made the decision to step back from my career to raise my children. During that time, I managed household finances, served as treasurer for several nonprofit organizations, and kept current with industry developments through online courses and industry publications." Derek leaned forward, skepticism clear on his face. "But no actual work experience in 15 years? The tech world has completely transformed since 2009. The first iPad hadn't even been released when you left the workforce." "I understand the industry has evolved," Eliza acknowledged calmly. "But core business principles remain the same, and I've been diligent about staying informed. In fact, I've followed Meridian's journey closely and was particularly interested in your recent product launch. I noticed some opportunities for improvement in your market approach that might help address the lukewarm reception." Trent snorted softly, exchanging another look with Derek. Madison's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh? Please enlighten us," Madison said, her tone making it clear she didn't expect anything of value. Eliza straightened in her chair. This was her moment to show them she wasn't just a housewife trying to rejoin the workforce. She was a strategic thinker with valuable insights. She opened her portfolio and pulled out notes she'd prepared, unaware that in a few hours these same dismissive faces would look very different indeed. Eliza took a deep breath and began sharing her thoughts on Meridian's recent product launch. Your new home automation system has impressive technology, but the marketing approach focuses too much on technical specifications rather than how it solves everyday problems for families. She pulled out a page of notes. I noticed your competitors are gaining ground because they show real people using their products in relatable situations. Your ads feature rotating 3D models and spec lists that most consumers don't understand. Derek's expression shifted from dismissive to slightly surprised, but he quickly recovered. That's an interesting take from someone who hasn't been in the industry for 15 years. Madison tapped her pen against her tablet. Our marketing team has extensive data suggesting that our target demographic responds to technical specifications. Perhaps your core customers do, Eliza acknowledged. But if you want to expand beyond early adopters, you need to connect emotionally. Right now, your product is being outsold 3-1 by Simply Home, despite having superior technology. Trent, who had been scrolling through his phone under the table, suddenly looked up. How do you know our sales figures compared to Simply Home? That information isn't public. Eliza felt a flash of alarm. She knew those numbers because Michael had mentioned them during a dinner conversation about market competitors. She couldn't reveal that without exposing her connection. Industry newsletters and analysis reports, she said smoothly. I subscribe to Tech Market Weekly, which ran a comparison piece last month. They may be estimates, but they matched the pattern I've observed in retail stores. Madison narrowed her eyes slightly but moved on. Let's talk about your actual qualifications. The role requires someone who can build relationships with technology partners. Your experience is not only outdated, but was at a much lower level than what we're looking for. At Tech Solutions, I helped secure partnerships that increased company revenue by 32% in my final year, Eliza countered. The principles of good relationship building haven't changed. Understanding partner needs, creating mutual value, and following through on commitments. Derek leaned back in his chair, looking unimpressed. But you haven't maintained any of those business relationships. Do you really think you can jump back in at this level after being... He paused, searching for a polite term. After being a stay-at-home mom? Eliza finished for him. I've continued building and maintaining relationships through my volunteer work. As treasurer for the Children's Education Foundation, I secured corporate sponsorships worth over $200,000 annually. Trent smirked at Derek. The silent communication between them was clear. They weren't taking her seriously. Mrs. Wong, Madison said, emphasizing the Mrs. slightly. Meridian is a fast-paced, cutting-edge technology company. Our employees often work nights and weekends. We need people who can keep up with the demands of the industry. The implication was clear. They assumed a middle-aged mother couldn't handle the workload. I raised twins while managing household, finances, coordinating complex family logistics, and still finding time to volunteer 20 hours a week. Eliza replied calmly. I understand demanding schedules and multitasking better than most. Derek checked his watch, a signal to Madison that he'd had enough. Madison nodded slightly and turned back to Eliza. Let's move on to technical skills. How would you rate your proficiency with current CRM software and data analytics platforms? I've taken online courses in Salesforce and HubSpot, Eliza answered. While I don't have professional experience with them, I understand the principles and could become proficient quickly. As for data analytics, I've completed certification courses in basic SQL and Power BI. Trent snorted softly. Basic courses aren't the same as daily use in a professional environment. No, they're not, Eliza agreed. But they show my commitment to keeping my skills current and my ability to learn independently. Derek shuffled some papers, clearly losing interest. Look, Mrs. Wong, while we appreciate your preparation, Meridian is an innovative company. We need people who are, he paused, searching for words. Current, Madison supplied. People who don't need to be trained on how to use a smartphone. She smiled thinly at her own joke. Eliza felt her cheeks warm but kept her expression neutral. I understand technology has evolved. That's why I've made consistent efforts to stay informed. I believe my combination of foundational experience and fresh perspectives could be valuable to your team. Trent had picked up his phone again, barely pretending to pay attention. Derek was making notes that Eliza suspected were unrelated to her interview. "Tell me about your familiarity with Meridian's product line," Madison said, a question that seemed designed to expose gaps in Eliza's knowledge. Eliza sat up straighter. This was something she had thoroughly prepared for. Meridian currently offers 3 main product categories: home automation systems, personal health monitoring devices, and your new line of smart office solutions. Your flagship home system, the MaryLink Hub, connects with over 200 third-party devices but has faced integration challenges with older smart home products. She continued, "Your health monitoring line leads in accuracy, but lags in user experience design. The smart office solutions are too new to judge market performance, but early reviews highlight the innovative desk-sharing capabilities while criticizing the price point for small businesses." The 3 interviewers exchanged surprised glances. Clearly, they hadn't expected this level of specific knowledge. "And how do you stay so informed about our products?" Derek asked, suspicion edging his voice. "Research," Eliza said simply. "I read industry reviews, followed tech blogs, and visited 3 different electronics stores to see your products in person. I also downloaded your annual report to shareholders." Madison's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine curiosity. "And what would you suggest for our smart office line's pricing issue?" "A tiered approach," Eliza replied without hesitation. "Keep your premium offering for enterprises that can afford it, but create a streamlined version for small businesses. They don't need all the features, just the core functionality. You'd expand your market while building brand loyalty with companies that will grow over time." For a brief moment, Madison seemed to be actually considering Eliza's words. Then Trent rolled his eyes, breaking the spell. "That's pretty basic business strategy," he said dismissively. "Our team has already considered tiered pricing models." "But you haven't implemented one," Eliza pointed out. "Sometimes the obvious solution is the right one." Derek checked his watch again, more obviously this time. "We should wrap this up. We have other candidates to see today." Madison nodded and closed her tablet cover. "Mrs. Wong, thank you for coming in. We'll be honest. This role requires someone with current industry experience and established relationships with potential partners." "I understand," Eliza said, maintaining her composure despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. "But I hope you'll consider how transferable skills and fresh perspectives can sometimes be more valuable than recent experience in the same field." Derek stood up, signaling the end of the interview. "We'll be in touch, but frankly, you might want to look for something more appropriate for your skill level. Perhaps an administrative role or customer service position would be a better fit for someone re-entering the workforce." The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. Trent didn't even bother to stand, just gave a casual wave as he returned to his phone. Madison walked Eliza to the door. "The receptionist can validate your parking," she said, her tone making it clear she didn't expect to see Eliza again. As they stepped into the hallway, Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her eyes widened slightly. "I need to take this. The elevator is down the hall to the left." With that, she turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, already answering her call. Eliza stood alone in the hallway, her portfolio clutched against her chest. The interview had gone exactly as she'd feared. They'd seen her age and employment gap and made immediate assumptions. Despite her preparation and knowledge, they couldn't see past their preconceptions. Walked slowly toward the elevator, trying to process her feelings. Disappointment certainly, but also frustration. She knew she could do the job, probably better than many of the younger candidates they'd see today. But she hadn't been given a fair chance to prove it. As she approached the elevator, she noticed increased activity on the floor. People were moving with purpose, checking their appearances, straightening ties, and smoothing dresses. Something important was happening. The elevator doors opened and Eliza stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the doors began to close, she heard someone call out, "They're coming up now, the board members and the new CEO." The doors shut, cutting off the voice. Eliza leaned against the wall of the elevator, closing her eyes briefly. The new CEO. If only these people knew how close she was to the highest levels of the tech world. Not that she would ever use those connections to get ahead. The elevator began its descent, carrying Eliza away from an opportunity that had never really been hers to begin with. She didn't know that in a few minutes her quiet dignity in the face of rejection would be contrasted sharply with the panicked realization of those who had dismissed her so easily. Eliza stood in the lobby, her interview badge still pinned to her blazer. The sting of rejection hung over her like a cloud. She'd known it would be difficult to re-enter the workforce after 15 years, but experiencing the dismissive attitudes firsthand was harder than she'd expected. She considered calling Michael, but decided against it. He would be upset on her behalf, and right now she needed to process her feelings alone. Instead, she headed toward the small cafe in the corner of the lobby. A cup of tea might help her gather her thoughts before driving home. The cafe was busy with Meridian employees grabbing mid-morning coffee and visitors waiting for appointments. Eliza ordered a green tea and found a small table near the window. As she sat down, she noticed several people glancing at their phones, and then looking toward the main entrance with anticipation. "They're here," she heard someone whisper excitedly to their companion. "The board members and the new CEO." Eliza sipped her tea, watching with mild curiosity. This must be what the commotion upstairs had been about. Meridian was announcing a new CEO today. She knew from Michael that leadership transitions were always big events in the tech world, particularly at companies as prominent as Meridian. Through the glass walls of the lobby, she could see a sleek black car pull up outside. A group of well-dressed people entered the building, their arrival creating a ripple of attention across the lobby. Several wore visitor badges similar to hers, but with special gold borders, clearly VIPs. Eliza was about to look away when she froze. Among the group of distinguished business people was a face she knew better than her own: Michael. Her husband was walking alongside an older Asian man she recognized from news articles as James Wong, Meridian's founder. Her heart skipped a beat. What was Michael doing here? He was supposed to be at his office today preparing for... The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. Michael's mysterious new position that he'd been so quiet about for weeks. The confidentiality agreements he'd mentioned signing. The way he'd seemed surprised when she mentioned interviewing at Meridian. Michael Chen, her husband of 20 years, was Meridian's new CEO. Eliza nearly spilled her tea. She'd been interviewing at the very company her husband was about to take over, and she hadn't known. More importantly, the people who had just dismissed her had no idea who she was. She considered slipping out unnoticed. This was exactly the kind of situation she'd wanted to avoid, having her connection to Michael influence how people treated her. But before she could decide, James Wong spotted her. "Is that Eliza?" he called out, changing direction and heading toward her table. Michael turned, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw her. "Eliza? What are you doing here?" Too late for a quiet exit now. Eliza stood, smoothing her skirt nervously. "Hello, James, Michael. I was just having an interview." James Wong reached her first, taking both her hands in his. "My dear, how wonderful to see you. It's been, 2 years since that charity gala?" "Something like that," Eliza smiled warmly. She'd always liked James, who had been a mentor to Michael early in his career. Michael approached, confusion written across his face. "You had an interview here? At Meridian? I thought you said Astra Group." "I changed my mind," Eliza said quietly. "I wanted to try something different." "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael asked, keeping his voice low. "Because I knew you were involved with Meridian somehow, even if you couldn't tell me the details yet. I wanted to do this on my own, remember?" She gave him a meaningful look. Understanding dawned on Michael's face, followed by concern. "How did it go?" Before Eliza could answer, the elevator doors opened and Madison Porter stepped out, accompanied by Derek and Trent. They were deep in conversation, apparently heading to the same event as Michael and James. They hadn't noticed Eliza yet. "There's the HR team now," James said, waving them over. "They'll be working closely with you, Michael. Let me introduce you." Eliza watched as the three interviewers approached, still unaware of the connection. Madison was speaking, animatedly to her colleagues, her professional mask fully in place now that board members were present. Ms. Porter, Mr. Simmons, Mr. Willis. James greeted them. I'd like you to meet Michael Chen, our new CEO, effective as of today's board meeting. All three shook Michael's hand with enthusiastic smiles and warm congratulations. Eliza stood slightly to the side, watching the color drain from their faces as James continued. And I believe you've already met his wife, Eliza? James gestured toward her, his expression pleasant but unreadable. Madison turned slowly, her perfectly composed face cracking slightly as recognition set in. Derek's mouth actually fell open, and Trent seemed to be trying to disappear into the floor. Mrs. Chen? Madison managed, looking from Eliza to Michael and back again. Yes, though I used Wong on my application, Eliza explained calmly. My maiden name. Michael looked between them, his expression darkening as he began to understand. You interviewed my wife today? Derek found his voice first. We didn't realize the connection. That was intentional, Eliza said. I wanted to be judged on my own merits. James Wong studied the uncomfortable faces of the HR team with growing suspicion. I take it the interview went well? Eliza has one of the sharpest business minds I know. Half of Michael's best ideas over the years have come from their dinner table conversations. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison looked as though she might be ill. Trent had gone pale, and Derek was tugging nervously at his collar. Michael turned to Eliza, his voice soft but insistent. What happened in that interview? Eliza hesitated. She hadn't wanted special treatment because of Michael, and she didn't want to create problems on his first day as CEO. But James was watching her carefully, and she knew he valued honesty above all else. It was not what I had hoped for, she admitted quietly. They made it clear that someone with a 15-year employment gap wasn't what Meridian was looking for. James's eyebrows shot up. Is that so? Michael's expression hardened. What exactly did they say? Madison stepped forward, professional training kicking in as she attempted damage control. Mr. Chen, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. We simply expressed concern about Mrs. Chen's recent work experience relative to the demands of the position. They suggested I look for something more appropriate for my skill level, Eliza quoted. Perhaps an administrative or customer service role. Michael's jaw tightened. For all his gentle manner at home, Eliza knew her husband could be formidable in business settings. She could see that side of him emerging now. I see, he said, his voice deceptively calm. And did my wife happen to mention that before taking time to raise our children? She was the youngest division head at Tech Solutions? Or that she's been the strategic advisor for 3 successful tech startups? Madison swallowed hard. No, she didn't mention that specifically. Did she share her insights about Meridian's products? Michael continued. Her analysis of our market position? She did have some suggestions about our marketing approach and pricing strategy, Derek admitted reluctantly. Suggestions you dismissed, Michael stated rather than asked. James Wong had heard enough. I think we should continue this conversation upstairs after the board announcement. His tone was pleasant but left no room for argument. Michael, I believe we're expected in the conference room. Eliza, will you join us? Eliza glanced at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. I'd be happy to, she said. As they walked toward the elevator, leaving the 3 interviewers standing frozen in the lobby, James leaned close to Eliza. Always did like your style, he murmured. Trying to make it on your own merits even when you could have waltzed in the door. It didn't work out quite as I planned, Eliza replied wryly. Oh, I don't know about that, James said with a twinkle in his eye. Sometimes the universe has a way of serving up justice right when it's needed, most. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside, joined by the other board members who had been waiting discreetly to one side during the uncomfortable encounter. As the doors closed, Eliza caught a glimpse of Madison, Derek, and Trent, huddled, together in urgent conversation, panic evident in their body language. "I suppose I should apologize," Michael said quietly as they ascended. "I knew you were interviewing today, but I had no idea you'd chosen Meridian. I would have warned you about my new position if I'd known." "No apologies needed," Eliza assured him. "I didn't tell you on purpose. I wanted to see if I could still make it in the business world without your name opening doors for me." "And?" Michael asked, taking her hand discreetly. Eliza sighed. "I got a harsh reminder of how the world often sees women who step away from their careers for family. But I also confirmed that I haven't lost my edge. I knew more about Meridian's products and market position than they expected." James Wong, who had been pretending not to listen, chuckled. "Meridian's loss would have been someone else's gain, my dear, though perhaps not anymore." The elevator stopped at the executive floor, where staff had gathered for the official announcement. As they stepped out, Michael kept Eliza by his side, his quiet way of showing everyone that they were a team. "Ready for this?" he whispered as they approached the crowded conference room. Eliza squeezed his hand once before letting go. "Always," she replied, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin. What had started as a humiliating interview had transformed into something unexpected. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in 15 years, Eliza felt the familiar rush of being back in the business world, where quick thinking and adaptability were everything. The conference room buzzed with excitement as Meridian's employees gathered for the big announcement. Eliza stood to the side as James Wong took the podium, watching the sea of curious faces. Some of the younger staff members glanced at her with confusion, clearly wondering who this plainly dressed woman was and why she stood among the executives. "Today marks a new chapter for Meridian Technologies," James began, his voice carrying the weight of the company he had built from nothing. "After 25 years as CEO, I'm stepping into the role of chairman of the board, and I couldn't be more pleased to introduce my successor." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Many had speculated about who would take over when James retired, but the company had kept the decision tightly under wraps. "Michael Chen needs little introduction in our industry," James continued. His leadership transformed Rivaltech from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar company. His vision for integrated technology solutions aligns perfectly with Meridian's future. Michael stepped forward to enthusiastic applause. He looked every inch the successful CEO in his tailored suit, but Eliza saw the brief flash of nervousness in his eyes that only a spouse of 20 years would recognize. She gave him an encouraging smile as he shook James's hand and approached the microphone. "Thank you, James, and thank you all for the warm welcome," Michael began. "Meridian has been a pioneer in this industry since before many of you were born, myself included." This earned a laugh from the crowd and a playful glare from James. As Michael continued his speech about his vision for Meridian's future, Eliza noticed Madison, Derek, and Trent slip into the back of the room. They stood awkwardly together, their faces still pale with shock. Madison kept glancing between Eliza and Michael, the connection between them now painfully obvious. "Success in today's market requires more than just technical excellence," Michael was saying. "It requires understanding how our products fit into people's lives, how they solve real problems, and how we communicate that value to customers who aren't necessarily tech experts." Eliza recognized the echoes of conversations they'd had at their kitchen table, debates about why brilliant technology sometimes failed in the marketplace while simpler solutions thrived. She felt a rush of pride hearing him articulate ideas they'd shaped together over the years. "I believe in surrounding myself with people who bring diverse perspectives and aren't afraid to challenge conventional thinking," Michael continued. "People who see opportunities where others see obstacles, who understand that a 15-year-old company like Meridian needs both innovative thinking and practical wisdom to move forward." His eyes found Eliza's briefly, and she knew that last part was for her, a subtle public acknowledgement of the value she brought to the table, even after years away from the corporate world. After the speech ended and the formal introduction concluded, the room broke into smaller groups. Board members congratulated Michael while curious employees introduced themselves to their new CEO. Eliza found herself approached by Catherine Rivera, Meridian's chief operating officer. "You must be Eliza," Catherine said warmly, offering her hand. "I've heard so much about you from James over the years, though we've never had the chance to meet." "It's nice to meet you, Catherine," Eliza replied, relieved to encounter a friendly face. "James mentioned you had an interview here today?" Catherine asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp with interest. "For which position?" "Strategic Partnership Manager," Eliza answered, "though I don't think I made a very favorable impression." Catherine's eyebrow lifted. "I find that hard to believe. James has always said you're one of the smartest business minds he knows." "Let's just say the interview panel had certain preconceptions about candidates with employment gaps," Eliza explained diplomatically. Understanding dawned on Catherine's face. "Ah, I see." She glanced across the room where Madison, Derek, and Trent were huddled together, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "And they had no idea who you were?" "None whatsoever. I used my maiden name on the application. I wanted to be judged on my own merits." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "That's admirable. And now they've discovered their mistake. In the most public way possible." "It wasn't my intention to embarrass anyone," Eliza said quickly. "I had no idea Michael was taking over as CEO here. He couldn't tell me due to confidentiality agreements." "Life has a funny way of delivering lessons sometimes," Catherine observed with a small smile. "Speaking of which, I believe James wants to have a word with your interviewers. This should be interesting." Across the room, James was indeed gesturing for Madison, Derek, and Trent to follow him. They looked like students being called to the principal's office as they trailed behind Meridian's founder toward a smaller meeting room. Michael appeared at Eliza's side, sliding an arm around her waist. "You've met Catherine, I see." "We were just getting acquainted," Catherine confirmed, "and discussing some interesting coincidences." Michael's expression turned serious. "I need to join James for that conversation. Would you like to come, Eliza?" Hesitated. "Is that appropriate? I don't want to make things more uncomfortable than they already are." "I think your perspective would be valuable," Catherine chimed in. "Besides, you're the wronged party here." After a moment's consideration, Eliza nodded. "All right, but I don't want this to overshadow your first day as CEO, Michael." "On the contrary," he replied. "It highlights exactly the kind of culture change I want to bring to Meridian." The small meeting room fell silent as Eliza entered behind Michael and Catherine. Madison, Derek, and Trent sat on one side of the table, while James stood at the head, his normally friendly face set in stern lines. "Ah, good. You're all here," James said. "Please sit down." Michael pulled out a chair for Eliza before taking his own seat. The gesture wasn't lost on the three interviewers, whose discomfort seemed to grow by the second. "I've asked Ms. Porter to explain exactly what happened in Mrs. Chen's interview today," James began. "Michael, Catherine, I thought you should hear this directly." Madison cleared her throat nervously. "Mr. Wong, Mr. Chen, I want to express our deepest apologies for any misunderstanding." "I'm not interested in apologies yet," James interrupted. "I want to know what was said and why. From what I understand, you dismissed a highly qualified candidate because she took time off to raise her family. Is that accurate?" Madison looked at her colleagues for support but found none. Derek was staring fixedly at the table, and Trent seemed to be wishing he could disappear. "We expressed concerns about Mrs. Chen's employment gap," Madison admitted, "and suggested that perhaps a more entry-level position might be appropriate for someone re-entering the workforce. Despite the fact that she demonstrated extensive knowledge of our products, market position, and offered valuable insights about our strategies," James pressed. "Yes," Madison said quietly. "That's correct." Michael leaned forward. "I'd like to know why. Was it her age? The fact that she's a mother? Or simply that she doesn't fit the image of what you think a tech executive should look like?" Trent, apparently finding a burst of courage, spoke up. "It wasn't personal, Mr. Chen. We have certain profiles that have proven successful at Meridian, and my wife doesn't fit that profile," Michael finished for him. "That's exactly the problem. You're so focused on finding people who fit a predetermined mold that you miss exceptional talent when it's sitting right in front of you. Catherine nodded in agreement. This is precisely why we struggle with diversity of thought at the executive level. Everyone looks the same, thinks the same, and comes from the same background. I don't think you understand the pressure we're under, Derek tried to explain. We have metrics for hiring, expectations about technical skills, and no room for evaluating people based on their actual abilities and potential contributions. Eliza spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. I understand the challenges of hiring, but when you dismissed me today, you didn't even consider what I might bring to Meridian. You saw a middle-aged woman in a modest suit and made immediate assumptions. The room fell silent as her words sank in. Madison had the grace to look genuinely ashamed. I don't want anyone fired over this, Eliza continued, looking at Michael and James. That's not why I'm here, but I do hope it serves as a wake-up call about the talent you might be overlooking every day. James nodded slowly, respect evident in his expression. Well said, Eliza. This isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing a systemic problem. Michael turned to the three interviewers. I'm not starting my tenure as CEO by firing anyone, but I am going to insist on changes to our hiring practices, effective immediately. He looked at each of them in turn. Madison, I want a complete review of our recruitment and interview processes, with specific attention to how we evaluate candidates with non-traditional backgrounds. Derek, you'll work with Catherine to develop metrics that capture the value of diverse perspectives and experiences, not just technical skills and recent employment. And Trent, Michael continued, you'll participate in a cross-functional team to identify blind spots in our product development and marketing approaches, blind spots that might be obvious to people who don't fit our typical employee profile. The three nodded, relief at keeping their jobs mixed with the sobering reality of the task ahead. As for you, Eliza, Catherine said thoughtfully, I'd like to know if you're still interested in working at Meridian. Obviously not in the role you interviewed for. I think we can do better than that. Eliza glanced at Michael, who gave her an encouraging nod. I'd need to think about it, she replied honestly. I wanted to earn a position on my own merits, not because of my connection to Michael. Completely understandable, Catherine said. When you're ready to discuss possibilities, my door is open. I have a feeling Meridian could benefit greatly from your perspective. As the meeting concluded and they filed out of the room, Eliza felt strangely lighter. The day had not gone according to plan, not even close, but perhaps it had gone exactly as it needed to. Not just for her, but for Meridian, and for others who might come after her with valuable contributions to make, if only given the chance. 1 month later, Eliza stood outside the Meridian Technologies building, taking a deep breath before pushing through the revolving door. Unlike her first visit, today she walked in with purpose, her head held high. The same receptionist who had barely noticed her before now greeted her with a warm smile. Good morning, Mrs. Chen. They're expecting you on the 35th floor. Thank you, Eliza replied, accepting the badge that no longer read visitor but executive staff. The past 4 weeks had been a whirlwind of conversations, decisions, and soul-searching. After that fateful day of her interview and Michael's introduction, as CEO, Eliza had taken time to consider her options carefully. She'd received calls from 3 other tech companies who had suddenly discovered her resume in their systems and found it remarkably impressive. The irony wasn't lost on her, but it was Catherine Rivera's offer that had intrigued her most. The COO had invited Eliza to lunch a week after the incident, away from Meridian's offices where they could speak freely. I'm not offering you a job because you're Michael's wife, Catherine had said bluntly over salads at a quiet restaurant. I'm offering because Meridian needs exactly what you bring to the table: insight into how our products fit into real people's lives, and the courage to point out when the emperor has no clothes. Catherine's proposal had been unexpected. Head of Strategic Initiatives, a new position reporting directly to her, not to Michael. The role would focus on identifying blind spots in Meridian's approach to products, marketing, and corporate culture. You'd be the official challenger of assumptions, Catherine had explained. The person who asks the uncomfortable questions no one else will ask. After careful consideration and many discussions with Michael about the potential complications, Eliza had accepted. Today was her first official day. As the elevator climbed to the 35th floor, one floor above where her disastrous interview had taken place, Eliza reflected on the conditions she'd set for taking the job. First, there would be no special treatment. She would be evaluated on her performance like any other executive. Second, her connection to Michael would not be flaunted but also not hidden. Transparency was essential. And third, she would have the freedom to build her own team, bringing in diverse perspectives that Meridian sorely needed. The elevator doors opened to reveal Catherine waiting for her. "Right on time," the COO said with approval. "Ready for the grand tour?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Eliza replied with a smile. As they walked through the executive floor, heads turned subtly to watch them pass. Eliza was under no illusion. She knew people would be curious about the CEO's wife joining the company. Some would assume nepotism. It would be her job to prove them wrong. "This is your office," Catherine said, opening the door to a corner space, with windows on two sides. It was spacious but not ostentatious, exactly what Eliza had requested. "I hope it meets your specifications." "It's perfect," Eliza said, setting down her bag on the desk. She took out a simple framed photo of her family and placed it on the credenza, the only personal touch she planned to add. "Your team is eager to meet you," Catherine continued. "I've gathered them in the conference room whenever you're ready." The team was a carefully selected group that Eliza and Catherine had put together over the past few weeks. It included people from different departments, age groups, and backgrounds, voices that weren't typically heard in executive discussions. As they walked to the conference room, they passed Madison Porter's office. The HR director was on the phone but looked up and gave a respectful nod to Eliza. Their relationship remained professional but cool. Madison had kept her job but had been required to complete extensive training on unconscious bias and modern hiring practices. Derek had been reassigned to a different department and Trent had chosen to leave the company 2 weeks after the incident. "Before we join your team, there's something you should know," Catherine said, pausing in the hallway. "The changes you suggested about our home automation marketing approach, we implemented them 3 weeks ago. Sales are up 12% already." Eliza couldn't help but feel a small surge of satisfaction. "That's good to hear." "It's more than good. It's a vindication of exactly why we needed someone like you here," Catherine replied. "Now let's introduce you to your team." The conference room fell silent as Eliza entered. 6 people of varying ages and backgrounds looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to admiration to careful neutrality. "Everyone, this is Eliza Chen, our new head of strategic initiatives," Catherine announced. "Eliza, your team." Over the next hour, Eliza listened more than she spoke, asking each team member about their background, their observations about Meridian, and what they thought could be improved. She noticed how some of the younger members seemed hesitant to speak freely, while others had clearly been waiting for an opportunity to share their thoughts. "I want to be clear about something," Eliza said when everyone had spoken. "I'm not here because of who my husband is. I'm here because sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from outside the echo chamber. Each of you was selected for this team because you bring something different to the table, a viewpoint that might not otherwise be heard." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. "Our job is to challenge assumptions, to question why things are done a certain way, and to find the opportunities others might miss. It won't always make us popular, but it will make Meridian better." By lunchtime, Eliza had already identified 3 priorities for her team to tackle. As she walked back to her office to review her notes, she passed Michael in the hallway. They exchanged professional nods, having agreed to maintain appropriate boundaries at work. "Mrs. Chen," he said formally, though his eyes twinkled. "I hope your first morning has been productive." "Very much so, Mr. Chen," she replied with equal formality. "Thank you." A young intern passing by looked between them with confusion, clearly not understanding the relationship. Eliza and Michael shared a brief smile before continuing in opposite directions. Back in her office, Eliza found a small package on her desk with a note from Catherine. A little welcome gift. Inside was a sleek nameplate for her desk that read simply, Eliza Chen, Head of Strategic Initiatives. As she placed it at the front of her desk, a knock came at her open door. It was Li Wei, the oldest member of her new team, and a veteran software engineer who had been with Meridian almost since its founding. "Do you have a moment, Mrs. Chen?" he asked respectfully. "Of course, Li, and please call me Eliza." He entered and closed the door behind him. "I wanted to tell you something privately. When I heard about what happened in your interview, and yes, everyone knows the story now, it reminded me of my own experience 20 years ago." Li sat down across from her. "I was passed over for promotion 7 times because my English wasn't perfect despite my technical skills. James Wong finally noticed and intervened. He gave me the chance no one else would." "I'm sorry you experienced that," Eliza said sincerely. "Don't be. It made me who I am," Li replied. "But I wanted you to know that what you're doing here matters. Not just the work itself, but how you got here, standing on your own merits, then using your position to create change." He stood to leave. "Many of us have been waiting for someone like you to shake things up. Not everyone will be supportive, but those of us who have been on the outside looking in, we're with you." After Li left, Eliza sat quietly for a moment, taking in his words. The path to this office had not been what she expected when she'd first decided to re-enter the workforce. The humiliation of that interview still stung when she thought about it. But perhaps everything had happened exactly as it needed to. Her computer chimed with an incoming email, her first assignment from Catherine. The subject line read, "Executive Meeting, your presentation on diversity of thought." Eliza smiled as she opened it. The presentation was scheduled for tomorrow, and the audience would include all senior directors, including Madison, who would have to sit and listen to the woman she had once dismissed. But this wasn't about revenge or embarrassment. It was about creating genuine change in a company that had become too comfortable with its own narrow vision. It was about opening doors for others who might not fit the expected mold, but had valuable contributions to make. As she began to outline her presentation, Eliza glanced at the family photo on her credenza. For 15 years, she had poured her intelligence and creativity into making a home and raising children who were now finding their own paths in the world. Those skills, patience, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and the ability to manage competing priorities were not liabilities but strengths she brought to this new role.